Hello YouTube and welcome to another video. In this one I'm going to attempt to make a carbon fiber ride plate for an SXR 800. At the end of the last video you guys may have seen that I actually have two ride plate molds, and that will be explained in this video. I'm going to start laying up a second ride plate here pretty quick, and I'm also starting on making another batch of pump stuffers because a few of you have showed interest in them. I've also posted this bed plate on eBay. For those of you who have not already heard, I've put this up on eBay. I am going to be leaving the item number and a link to the eBay posting in the description of this video. Huge thanks to the Jet Ski Brothers for throwing up their ad. It was both informative and entertaining. So thanks to Josh and Jacob for that. Anyway, let's get into this video. I didn't do any filming when I was laying this up. This is the ride plate for an SXR 800, but I wrote out a list of what I was doing. BJ was here and we were having a chat, so I kind of threw this together while we were talking. But it's almost ready to start bagging up. Well, it is ready to start bagging up. I need to lay down the peel ply, the infusion mesh, and basically figure out how I'm actually going to infuse it. There is over 10 millimeters of cloth through the edges here. And so I want to make sure that I have more than one infusion point, or that I keep the distance of infusion down. So what I'm going to do for sure is run the vacuum lines around the outside, and then I'm going to infuse it from the center. Anyway, it is almost 1 a.m., so I am going to go in and get some sleep, come out tomorrow, and I'll try to remember to film some of the process tomorrow. This is pretty neat. It's quite fun to lay up for me, actually. I'm getting halfway decent from doing the bed plates, and so inserting the little ribs and stuff in this was actually a lot of fun. I might film the next one. This one was kind of figuring it out as I went, but now that I kind of have it figured out, we'll see how the infusion goes, and then I'll probably film the next one. I don't know if I discussed it with you guys, but the way this is going to work, I've got the vacuum run around the outside, around the perimeter, and I have it teed off so I am pulling air from both sides, not only all the way around, but I can split it. So if it happens to, for some reason, shoot over to this side but not come this way, I can plug off this line here and it might pull it this way. The line is connected all the way around, so it probably won't make any difference, but it makes me feel a little bit better. I've got it infusing from the center, and that actually splits the infusion time in half, because instead of going in on the outside here and going all the way across, it's starting in the middle, and as it goes a ½ inch here, it also goes a ½ inch here. So I can actually double the flow rate into it, of volume of epoxy, without making the flow front move too fast. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm just finishing up degassing the epoxy. Got 1 second left to go. I'm gonna stop that, take the epoxy out, and start infusing. I'm really hoping that I didn't put these lines too close to the sides. I did include some resin breaks on the edges here, but I'm hoping that the epoxy doesn't just shoot through the ends and then basically work its way into my vent lines, because that would kind of suck. Not sure what I would do in that situation, but all right, let's get the epoxy run through here nice and quick like. And once it starts actually filling into the fiber, then I'll slow it down. I'm going to keep the infusion fairly slow here because the stack is quite thick. In total, I have 8 layers of 6-ounce cloth, and then 2 full sheets of 1 millimeter biaxial, and then a bunch of ribs along the sides and front and back some through the center of, I think it's 5mm, and then on the sides it's 10mm. So there's definitely a lot of thickness to infuse there. So
I've been watching you talk us every night, counting up your sins. I keep a list and checking it twice. I know where you've been, I smell the sin, and you're looking nice. You can't bury me. You don't love a night. I'm still broken in the gutter. It's just me on my side, but I leave you with the shudder. I got ghosts you don't wanna know.
hopefully the time lapse shows up how the epoxy went out to the edges and now it's traveling along the resin breaks. It goes to show how important the resin breaks are, because if I didn't have them in place, the epoxy right now would just be getting sucked directly into the vacuum lines and then out through these hoses. So I've done a couple of things to make this work. I'm gonna switch back over to time lapse. I've got a lot to focus on still, so let's get this done. It is just short of an hour, about 50 minutes since I started infusing the part, and the resin has made it basically all the way through the breaks on the perimeter, all the way up to the vacuum line. I have used one full cup, or one 300 gram cup of epoxy, and probably another 100 grams of this one. I expect this to take about 600 grams to fully infuse, but I didn't actually weigh the fabric, so yeah. For the first one, I was just trying to figure out how to actually lay it up, and there's a lot of work involved in doing that. And so to try to keep all the scraps and to weigh all the cloth, and it's a lot of work. So the next time around, I will weigh it. The good news is that I opened up the clamp and the epoxy is still rushing in. So it's not starting to gel up in the part or anything. So I'll come back if anything interesting happens, or when it's ready to put in the oven, if this will even fit in the oven. I'm not sure. Not oh yeah. It didn't infuse all the way through here. Shit. Shit. Alright, YouTube. As you guys probably saw in that last clip, this part was not successful. Kind of upset about it, but I was gonna have to keep one of these anyway to make sure that I had the right dimensions for the ones that I make in the future, because Once that ski is gone, I won't have anything to fit a bed plate up on, so I need to make sure I have one of these to actually compare the other ones that I make to. So what ended up happening is it didn't fully infuse along the edges. This kind of different colored stuff along here and here is actually still cloth. If I peeled up, oh yeah, you can actually see there it's moving. If I peeled up on it, it would peel right up. Not much I can do about that now. I am going to first bake this in the oven. I trimmed it up, washed it off, and now I'm going to bake it in the oven to completely dry that stuff out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try to just infuse these areas, but not so that this will be a usable part, just so that I can use this dimensionally to compare my next ones to. I'm going to try to make another one of these right away. It doesn't take nearly as long as the bed plates. And I'm going to try a couple of different things. I think one of the reasons why this didn't infuse was because of the sharp shoulder that is created right here. So the material comes along and then it makes kind of like a 45-degree bend and then another 45-degree bend. And that puts a lot of pressure in through this corner, and then the material thins out. And so the epoxy had to flow in through here and then through a very thin area. And I think that caused it to just kind of skip over the top instead of going in, along the mold surface. So once again, I'm kind of frustrated about this. Obviously not pleased. There's a lot of money worth of material here, but like I say, I would have had to keep one. This is fairly chunky for what it is. I mean, not compared to the original. All right, so I've got a scale here. We'll use the same scale, but this isn't really accurate enough for this because this is quite light. But let's see. This is 2.2 pounds, 1.1 kilogram. And this $6.3 pounds, 2.9 kilos. So there's a substantial difference, but I kind of felt like this should be lighter than the bed plate. So I have a feeling that some of this material has too much epoxy in it and some of it doesn't have enough. I think what I'm going to do this time is actually run a few different epoxy inlets. I'm going to have to think very carefully about how I do this, but I want to make sure that I can infuse directly into these pieces. So I'm going to have to go and do a little bit of thinking. I'm going to have to lay the material up more carefully this time, and yeah. The mold had a little divot in it. Apparently the epoxy wasn't fully cured. I do not know why, because it has been a few weeks. But yeah, there was a little divot and there was imprints from the carbon fiber. So I decided what I would do is I would trim this up. It was too wide to fit in the oven, so I trimmed the sides off so that it would just fit in the oven so that I could heat cure the parts. And I put the bed plate mold in the oven, and I looked at the temperature and it was 237, I think it made it to. Yeah, it was 114 Celsius. And I opened up the oven. I didn't think too much of it, but I was going to let it cool down a bit. I opened up the oven and I could hear crackling. And I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe the epoxy that I had just put on in the bottom was bubbling, because I just recently put some on the bottom. And yeah, the stuff on the bottom is perfectly okay, which doesn't make any sense. But it is the Infusion epoxy that I got. The polypoxy that I put on the mold surface, which I guess this is good to know, but it really sucks. The polypoxy, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, it bubbled. So this mold is garbage. There's a huge bubble through here. There's a bubble in this area. It bubbled down in this corner. So I'm gonna have to remake this mold. Not impressed. Not even a little bit. As my mother used to say, no sense crying over bubbled epoxy. Move on and make another. I built this last night. I put the flanges on the bed plate once again and covered it in PVA. I'm hoping the PVA holds up on the flanges this time. Last time I put it on, I didn't put it on quite this thick, and the epoxy actually stuck to the flanges, which was kind of time consuming to clean off. So I'm hoping this time around it works okay. I don't think I filmed any of this, but I got all of the gel coat and fiberglass laid down on top of the bed plate, making my new bed plate mold. It should be actually quite a bit better than the old one in a few ways. So yeah, hopefully that helps the parts turn out successfully. I've also been working on this, which I don't know if it's actually going to be a thing or not, but I decided I would show you guys. So that's what that is. Now the problem that I'm having is that the reality of the situation is that I should be building these so that they fit most people's skis without any modification or with very little modification, so that I can sell a few to different people. What I'm going to be doing is making a mold for one so that it fits my ski. So it's going to take a lot of work, and I don't exactly know what I'm going with yet. I've filled in the gas switch thing here, so I'm using plasticine to kind of shape it, and it's going quite well as far as the shape goes. But if I wanted this to fit other people's skis, I wouldn't fill in this area. With mine, I'm going to try to stick to the basic shape that it is right now up here, but these side pieces are going to come down. This is the plan. This might change. Side pieces are going to come down and go directly into the seat, and there will be a slight curve here where this goes down behind the seat as well. I've got some advice on mold making from a few people, and I'm going to try to use some of that advice so that this part goes a little better for me. Once I make a couple of these for myself, if it's successful, then I might modify one of the pieces so then I can then make a mold that will fit the stock one. But this is going to be a very complicated and drawn out process because, well, for one thing, it's going to be a split mold. The mold's actually going to have to be in two pieces because, well, it has that step in it, so you couldn't make the mold from the top or the front or the back. Basically, the mold is going to have to be of one side and then the other side. So, two-piece mold that, comes apart to remove the part out of the mold. This might be a little bit of a spoiler alert, but I didn't want to leave you guys hanging on the results of the bed plate. I ended up re-infusing it and making an aluminum insert for it to see how this would work. It ended up turning out okay. Those blotchy spots all over this is because I was working with plasticine making the cover for the X2, but it turned out quite well. I don't think on the final versions I will actually use aluminum inserts, but that was the easiest way to get this thing to fit properly. I might actually use aluminum inserts and round-headed cap bolts. It would make the production of these things a little better, so you guys let me know what you think. The difference would be that with these you would have a cap-headed bolt, a rounded cap-headed bolt that would actually stick up a little bit, and with the R&D ride plate, the head of the bolt is recessed down into the hole so the water can pass over the top. I honestly don't think it's that much of a difference, and the weight difference would more than make up for it. But yeah, you guys let me know what you think. Anyway, I've got lots of stuff to do. I did get the coil in for the SXR 800. I don't think I even mentioned anything about that, but the charging system isn't working properly in this. I might throw some clips in the next video. I know I said that in the last video, but this video has gotten a little bit long already. So that is going to do it for this one. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.